there, my name is Caitlin Schmidt and I work at the Wellness Station in Durham, North Carolina. I'm a physical therapist and a craniosacral practitioner. And this is Paul McAndrew.
And I am co-director with my wife Lorraine Davis of the Wellness Station. And today we're going to explore how we walk, how we move when we're on our feet. And we're going to end up with a lesson that we sometimes call mime walking, if you've ever seen a person doing pantomime walking. So, ready to begin?
Yeah, and I think just saying too that this is something a lot of people come and they say, I feel so awkward when I walk, or I've had so much pain in my knee for years that I'm very stiff. So a lot of people's goals are related to just walking more fluidly or with better balance, so that may be the type of person we do this with.
Yeah, I mean, just about everybody that comes to us, almost regardless of whether they come with a neurological condition or what's kind of in the category of orthopedics, they're complaining, they're at least reporting that they have some discomfort. And discomfort, certainly in the spine, is almost always translated as the brain makes the association of movement with discomfort, and therefore it kind of sends messages down to the muscles of the torso to protect and guard. So the people are walking like this, and there's very little flow. Yeah. And that means that those joints, those tissues, those joints of the spine, for example, are synovial joints, just like our knees, our elbows, our shoulders, our hips. They require synovial fluid. They require movement to bring new synovial fluid into the joints. Mm-hmm. So when you're moving stiffly, you're actually depriving those joints of the nourishment that they need to stay healthy. Okay, so how about if we're going to go ahead and begin, and anytime during the lesson, if you want to turn it off so that you can stay with some portion of the lesson, please, we encourage you to do that. So how about if you go ahead and shift from one foot to the other, Caitlin? Great. So you might wonder why I have my little friend in my hand. So what's happening right now is Caitlin's spine, if it was one long bone, should be very fine in doing this particular motion. Okay, now why don't you let that come to a rest. Now can you let your left knee bend, and think of your shoulders just kind of hanging out where they are, and let your hips go out to the right a little bit. And then come on back, and then the right knee bends and your hips go out to the left. So now what she's doing is she's actually differentiating the vertebrae from one another. She's allowing her pelvis to move without her upper body having to move. It may want to, but it doesn't need to. Okay, great. Now I want you to let that rest. So Caitlin can do that beautifully. How many of the people that come to us when you first teach that can do that right off the bat?
Nobody.
Nobody. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. So here are some of the tricks that we use. So how about if you go ahead and stand with your back against the wall, and then let your feet a little bit out from the wall. You'll see that she's maybe about 12 inches, her heels are maybe 12 inches. Just, it's nothing exact that needs to be, just enough that your bottom is away from the wall, but your shoulders and upper back are against the wall. Okay, now go ahead and let your left knee, or whichever, let your knee bend. And watch what's happening now. You can see in her blouse, the movements, and how her hips are moving, and how her shoulders are able to stay level. Again, what that means is that she's sending messages into her nervous system that says, hey, you know what? We've got some freedom through here. We're not all locked together. That's beautiful. Okay, so think about now, why would this leaning against the wall make it easier for a person to learn something where when they're standing in open space and they're having trouble with, they're bending their knee, but they're trying to send their hip and they're stiffening their upper back, so because they say, oh, I'm not supposed to move up here, right? Okay, so then they stiffen that and they're going like, going like
That's
this.
The gut response.
Right. Then they get really, really, really good at being really stiff. Yeah, so why leaning against the wall? So think about that. And now we're going to go ahead and actually take this lesson and bring it into a recumbent position where your nervous system can actually process new neuromuscular patterns even easier than when you're standing. Okay, so come on, rest on your back. And we're going to go through this relatively briefly. This is a lesson that in of itself, just this lying down portion, could easily take someone a half hour, 45 minutes as we go through it step by step. We're not gonna, because of the format of this relationship here with what we're doing, these are brief overviews of what we do. We're gonna keep this briefer, but appreciate that you don't wanna, if you have any trouble with any of these moves, don't force it. Take your time, relax, be easy with yourself. So Caitlin, go ahead and bring your legs up into a bent position. And if you just rock your pelvis a little bit towards your head so that your tailbone comes up, and then down towards your feet. Yeah, beautiful. So the basic relationship between her feet and the table, and pushing with her feet and raising the tailbone, lowering the tailbone. Now how about if you begin to actually let your pelvis come a little bit up off the table. So many of you might know this as bridging in the Feldenkrais world, and it's kind of spread, which is nice, thank goodness. It's oftentimes referred to as spine like a chain. If you could imagine Caitlin's spine like a series of links, and she's nicely, not as a big chunk lifting her spine, but one by one she's lifting each vertebrae, and one by one she's lowering them back down. Okay? Now how does this relate to walking with more freedom in one's back and one's hips, etc.? So now the next time that you come down, just pause. Great. Now let's imagine that you're lying in the sand somewhere, and you've been leaving an imprint directly in line with the center of your body. How about if you now raise your hips up and glide them to the left a little bit and lower them down? Beautiful. Now go ahead and lift them up and glide them across the center over to the right and lower them down. Okay, now watch what's happening now to her spine. And now begin to let your head roll opposite. Yeah. Uh-huh, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Now can you see how much of her spine is participating? This may be, for this particular client, not for Caitlin, because she's done these many, many times, but for a client that's with us, this may be the very first time that that person's nervous system has ever paid attention to putting together this really nice, beautiful, fluid movement. Okay, great. Now why don't you let that rest? Okay, so now why don't you go ahead and roll to your side. Come on back up to sitting. Notice how nicely she came up to sitting.
Feldenkrais way.
And come on and stand here facing the windows.
Okay.
Now how about if we go into what we would call that mime walking, where you're letting the hips glide and the ankles roll. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of takes a minute to like prime the system.
Yeah. And notice how your head is turning a little bit. Yeah, let that happen. And now can you keep that movement going, and can you let your eyes softly be on the horizon so that your head stays actually, now your eyes are going to stay straight ahead. There you go. Because that's how most mammals will walk through life, is focusing out on the horizon, and everything, as long as you're free through the neck and down into the chest, everything is free to move relative to that. Beautiful.
Yeah, this is nice for anyone with chronic neck tension and hold it. It kind of is like freeing the shoulders and the head relationship really nicely.
Yeah.
And relating it to gravity. So every time you do a lesson and integrate it into gravity, it's going to translate into walking and functional things where you're on your feet, and take the pattern from the table and integrate it into actual standing.
Yeah.
I got thrown off.
So try this at home, and let's see how far you get. Thanks for tuning in.